Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your number one attitudinal bourbon destination. I'm John Stark, and I'll be bringing you candid and sometimes irreverent whiskey news, opinions, and reviews on the industry and the products they've been bringing us for hundreds of years. Today, we're going to trade shots of Everclear, and I'm going to introduce you guys to my brand new OnlyFans page. Yeah, so we are not doing either of those things today, but what we are doing is talking about whiskey. I've got lots to share today, kids, so hold on to your Glencairns. Oh, and real quick, I want to give a big thanks to all the new listeners out there. We've got lots and lots of folks across the world just joined us in the last week, and I want to extend a special Whiskey Freak welcome to all of you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So today I'm going to talk about Old Commonwealth Whiskey. It's back. And we're going to talk about Fireball Tears Whiskey. You're going to love this one. MGP's cutting back on production. And I'm going to try to figure out what the hell is a state-certified whiskey and why. And lastly, I'm going to review Woodford Reserve Straight Malt Whiskey. Now you're probably asking, why am I reviewing something you can pretty easily find and afford? Exactly. So here's the deal. Old Commonwealth is back from Pappy Van Winkle. Okay, well, it's not exactly from Pappy, but it's the Van Winkle family of whiskeys. Let me explain. Give you a little history lesson here. Old Commonwealth bourbon was originally produced by Julian Van Winkle III. That's not a joke. And the bourbon shared the name of the distillery in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. It was formerly called the Hoffman Distillery, which Julian bought and renamed Old Commonwealth back in the early 80s. Now, Julian launched his new 10-year-old bourbon in 1997, and the bourbon was a 10-year-old wheater. And it had a lot of similarities, they say, I've never had it, to the Pappy Van Winkle line. Most especially, they say it was close to Old Rip Van Winkle 10. Now, it was sourced, probably from Stitzel-Weller, and he bottled it at 107 proof. Now, it had a super cool wax-sealed top and a fancy-looking gold-bordered label. Really made you think Pappy Van Winkle. But the brand came to an end in 2002, and that's when Julian and Sazerac started their joint venture together, and the Old Commonwealth brand sadly was phased out. Now, let's jump ahead to 2019. We've got whiskey entrepreneurs Zachary Joseph and Andrew English. They acquired the rights to Old Commonwealth, and they relaunched the brand. Now these dudes are sourcing and bottling bourbon under the Old Commonwealth name. This new version of the bourbon pays homage to the old version, and even the bottle design looks similar to the original if you see it. It includes like this rectangular label kind of resembling the Pappy style. But one thing, the bourbon inside is very different. This updated iteration of Old Commonwealth, it is not a wheated bourbon. Instead, it's a traditional bourbon with 75% corn, 15% rye, and 10% malted barley. It's bottled at cask strength at 131.83 proof. Way bolder than Julian's original. Now, the SRP for this fall 2024 release is $200. But there's a very limited supply of what they call special barrels. Now, it's so special, it's sourced from a renowned Kentucky heritage distiller. But it's also so special, they're not going to tell you where. Exactly. So we're guessing at this point. Anyway, you know how I feel about that. But I'm not going to take a flyer on a brand new bourbon at $200 and you don't even give me any information about it. So anyway, that's just me. Now you know I love reading tasting notes. So I'm gonna read you some on this real quick. And unfortunately, I don't have music today. Just get a load of this. On the palate, the medium weight and lightly oily bourbon coats your mouth nicely. The sip starts with cherry pie and ripe plums, and there's an older, dusty feel to the liquid as it crescendos, reminiscent of hard candies you'd find at a bowl on your grandma's coffee table. Okay, there's more, so hang on. Towards the end of your sip, some dark chocolate and oak arrive. A fast pop of roast peanuts arrives right before the finish. It's equally fruity, juicy, and bold. Okay, that sounds odd to me. And I really don't want anything that's on the coffee table at grandma's house. I mean, I'm just going to say, it sounds weird to me. I'd try it, but I'm not taking a flyer at $200. And by the way, actually, I heard they sold it out already. So you're not going to get it anyway. It does sound fascinating. If you find it at your favorite bar or maybe a buddy has it, I would try it. And, maybe next time when they come out with the next release, whatever that happens to be, maybe it'd be worth it. But again, not taking a flyer at $200 anyway. Now, I was poking around and saw that these guys at Old Commonwealth, they have another new brand that they've revived. And it was gone since 1967. But they've revived the Kentucky Nectar brand. And they're calling this first release of it Kentucky Nectar Batch 1, oddly enough. And this stuff actually sounds amazing to me for a couple of reasons. Here are the deets. It's a double-barreled, cask-strength, wheated Kentucky straight bourbon finished in honey casks. It's 106 proof, and they say it drinks below its proof point, okay. Now, listen to these tasting notes. Now, this sounds incredible to me, especially if you're going to do a sweeter pour. They say it's char first, then a pop of sweet honey, baking spices, then cinnamon crumb cake drizzled with honey. And the finish has sweet cream vanilla arriving first, and then a fast dry down with the lingering note of honey graham crackers. So that sounds freaking amazing to me, and I definitely want some of that. Oh, I forgot, the mash bill, 64% corn, 24% wheat, 12% malted barley. And get this, the SRP, the MSR, whatever you want to call it, it's affordable. Okay, well, it's more affordable. Maybe a splurge buy, depending. It's only $99.99. And to me, that sounds amazing.
Warning, incoming missile. Warning, incoming missile.
Okay, well, there's no incoming missiles, but I'm pretty wound up today, if you can tell already. Fair warning, kids. Here we go. Listen carefully. Fireball Tears Whiskey. Okay, well, it's not really Fireball Tears Whiskey. Get this, it's called Cryerball Whiskey. I just can't make this crap up on my own, guys. You heard me right. The good folks at Sazerac have lost their damn minds. Again. If it wasn't bad enough they foisted that Traveler whiskey on us earlier this year, now we got to put up with this absolute nonsensical BS called Cryerball. Let me explain, so we can all shake our heads together. Now, Fireball Whiskey, that classy stuff, it's launching a limited edition whiskey called Cryerball. It's made from the tears of disappointed fans after their team loses. Okay, these clowns are they're going to capture these tears by putting paid tear collectors with eyedroppers and jars. Picture this, outside major NFL and college rivalry games. Now, what will they do with these tears? Well, the tears will undergo a sterilization and distillation process which will create salty cinnamon Cryerball for next season. I'll bet all you whiskey freaks are like, holy crap, what games will they be at? I'd love to be a part of this magnificent creation. So I'm going to tell you. The big rivalry games include Florida versus Georgia, the Eagles versus the Cowboys, Packers Bears, Ravens Steelers, Auburn versus Alabama, and Michigan Ohio State. Couple things here. My first thought is, who's getting fired for this? Who exactly is going to get their ass canned for this nonsense? Now, I know nobody in their right mind takes Fireball seriously anyway, but this takes dumbassery to the next level. I can just hear them sitting around the boardroom at Sazerac. Well, Mikey, you got any big ideas for next year's whiskey release?
Sure, basically, what do you think if we put human tears in the whiskey?
Now, Mike is quite the dipstick. Everybody knows this, and Mike figures if he throws this idea out there, he's probably going to get laughed out of the room, but he's tired, he's hungry, and he just wants to go home after this marathon brainstorming session at Sazerac headquarters. So, in his weakened state, this crap slips out of his mouth. And what do you know? The genius VP of marketing, Skip. Everybody knows a skip, right? So skip begins the slow hand clapping. You know, the clapping that gets faster and faster, and eventually everyone in the boardroom joins in because, like mind-numbed robots, that's what you're supposed to do in the boardroom. Now, Mike, the first-year marketing dweeb, well, he has himself a standing ovation. So instead of getting fired, this schmuck, he's going to get promoted. Well, that sounds about right. Well, another question and thought I've got on this is, who exactly will buy this stuff? I mean, maybe if you're a vampire or a werewolf or some such creature, you'd be drawn to this foul liquid. I don't get it, and I'm glad I don't get it. And please, oh Lord above, don't let any whiskey freaks buy this crap. Promise me, guys, promise me you're not going to participate in this foolishness. Listen, bottling human sadness, and that's really what this comes down to. It's kind of sick. It's twisted, and it's really a ridiculous gimmick. Now, I know, they got us to talk about it today, and well, that's what the marketing folks wanted. But I couldn't just scroll past this one when I saw it in my news feed. So bravo to them at Sazerac. We're talking about it. But just like Traveler, remember how we got fooled on that one? Well, this takes a really stupid idea to the next level. Seriously, Sazerac.
How dare you!
Exactly. We deserve better than this. So MGP is cutting back on production. Remember when I said there'd be a whiskey glut and that something would have to give? Well, MGP's recent announcement is proof positive. MGP, now, they're one of the biggest whiskey producers in the country, if not the world. And I did a little research. How much whiskey does MGP put out each year? Well, their Lawrenceburg, Indiana facility, that's their primary whiskey production site, is capable of producing about 10 million proof gallons a year. Now, to put that in perspective, in recent years, the U.S. has been producing around 35 million proof gallons. So that's for all types of whiskey, including bourbon, rye, and Tennessee whiskey. So suffice it to say, MGP is a really big dog in the whiskey universe. And their CEO, David Bratcher, well, he's very clear. He says, starting next year, MGP will, quote, further lower our net aging whiskey put away and scale down our whiskey production. See, the fact is they're facing a market that's just not as strong as it once was. And I've talked about this. Their CEO was also quoted as saying, after years of growth, we've reached a point where barrel inventories are high, sales are softening, and prices are slipping. Truth is truth, and last month, MGP's head honcho actually issued a profit warning. They're expecting sales to fall from $750 million to $700 million and stock prices to decline. Now, don't take any stock information from me, kids, but that's what their CEO is saying. So you got to ask yourself, is MGP the only one facing this hard truth? No pun intended. The answer is not hardly. Believe it or not, sales of tequila, and I did some more research here. Sales of tequila and mezcal have recently overtaken whiskey. It hurts my heart too, trust me, guys. But the growing number of distilleries that are competing to supply sourced whiskey, it proves even more that the market is saturated. Now, brands that once relied only on MGP, well, now they have other sources like Bardstown Bourbon Company and many, many others. I mean, just think about all the small distilleries across the country. And some of those smaller distilleries do put out great stuff. So for now, MGP is going to continue focusing on their own brands like Remus and Rossville Union Rye, which that Rossville Union Rye is fantastic, by the way. I warned a few months back that we've reached a tipping point, and right now the entire industry, in my opinion, is soon going to feel that strain. Understand, I'm not freaking out. I'm actually quite optimistic about prices coming down, and more importantly, maybe we'll get less gimmicks and silliness and just good, solid, delicious whiskey. I'm going to keep my eye on this issue, and just like I said back on my Are We Having a Whiskey Glut podcast episode, so stay tuned. and I'll let you know what's up. So I heard the phrase estate certified recently, and at first I thought, are we talking about the death tax or selling real estate or what? Well, it turns out it's a new buzzword in some such whiskey program being pushed by the University of Kentucky. So what exactly is estate certified? Why do we need it? Why should we care? Should we care? Are whiskey drinkers clamoring for this new program? I'm going to answer all those questions right now, in my opinion. So first of all, we need to define, what is this estate certified whiskey? Well, it's actually the Estate Whiskey Alliance. Wow, an alliance, it sounds powerful. It makes me think of Star Wars, right? The Estate Whiskey Alliance was established by UK, the University of Kentucky, in 2023, and their mission is dedicated to discovering, advancing, and promoting the virtues of estate-produced whiskey. So right off the bat, if you're not part of the alliance, this group, this collective, you're not virtuous. Kind of sounds elitist to me. I dug a little more because I want to know, what does that mean? What does it actually mean? Their goal? Through member-led initiatives, the Estate Whiskey Alliance seeks to explore, elevate, and advocate for the principles inherent in whiskey crafted through estate production methods. Okay, what does that mean? I feel like Sherlock Holmes here trying to decipher this crap. Okay, estate whiskey certified products have each of the following characteristics. So they're going to... Listen, folks, this program is going to destroy small distilleries. Listen to this. Production processes, including milling, cooking, fermentation, distillation, barreling, aging, and bottling, occur only on the estate distillery. And at least 2/3 of all mash bill grains are grown on estate-owned or controlled land. And what do you get for following this program? Well, they say central to its mission is a rigorous certification program which grants distilleries a non-exclusive license to place the esteemed estate whiskey certified logo only on products meeting or exceeding the program criteria. Esteemed. Why so much gobbledygook, buzzwords, and BS? In my opinion, this is just another quasi-governmental think tank BS organization that's going to put a logo on your bottle to show how much, in their words, virtue you have. So I was hanging out with the guys the other day. We all got to talking, and we decided that what would totally complete the whiskey universe would be the Estate Whiskey Alliance. I mean, we got problems like homelessness, food insecurity. Hell, we still haven't brought our stranded astronauts back from the space station yet. But what's really going to make everything happy time is, you guessed it, the Estate Whiskey Alliance. Now, you know, if you've listened to any of my podcasts, I've ranted about all the silliness and the aging processes, the crazy finishing nonsense, weird mash bills, triple barrel, quadruple, blah, blah, blah. But this one really means something for real. It means that smaller distilleries are going to be, if they care about being virtuous, these smaller distilleries are going to be screwed. There's no way a small distiller can grow, mill, mash, age, and bottle everything themselves. And if they can't, they'll have to bow to the big boys. Do any of you guys really even give a damn about this alliance? It feels to me like a bunch of academics and elites kind of getting together to ice out the competition. I say keep an eye on this group, or better yet, ignore them. I know when I go to buy whiskey now, I'm going to make sure to ignore any such markings or virtue labeling, because if we all buy into this mantra, this cult-like behavior, the little guys are going to be doomed. I could go on for another hour here, but I got to keep the blood pressure down, so quickly and quietly, I'm moving on. And I'm moving on to the fun part, my review today. And today, I'm cracking open a bottle of Woodford Reserve Straight Malt Whiskey. Okay. You want to listen to the other guys sit around and brag about the latest release of Pappy 23 they got their hands on? You know, the bottle you'll never get your hands on? It's not going to happen here, kids. Here we review something you can find and afford. Of course, as you know, there are exceptions, from time to time. But I know what y'all go through. We've all been there. You're standing in line at Walmart or Friar Tuck's or wherever your favorite liquor store is. And my gosh, you're looking at the hundreds of bottles, most of which you've never had before, and you have to make a choice. Do I try something new and possibly get burned? Or do I stick with an old reliable that's tried and true? I know exactly what that feels like. So I really try hard to focus on the stuff that regular folks can find and afford without taking a payday loan. Hence, today we're talking about Woodford Reserve Straight Malt Whiskey. And if you listened to the last pod episode, you knew that ahead of time because I told you about it. I gave you fair warning what we were going to do today. So I encourage you to open that bottle if you have it right now with me today. We can enjoy it together. Or will we enjoy it? Let's find out. So this one comes from our good friends at Brown-Forman from Woodford Reserve Distillery. It comes in at 90.4 proof, which is the standard for these guys. It's kind of their signature, so to speak, at 90.4 for all of their core expressions, at least. They've got the Distiller's Select, they've got the rye, and they've got their wheater, and now they've got this malt. There is no age on this one. I don't have any idea how old it is, but I do want to talk about the bottle real quick. And I always mention the bottle shape and style. Well, this one is a 1 liter bottle. It's the same shape and size as most Woodford bottles, which makes it hard to distinguish for me if you're just walking down the aisle and you take a glance. It's like if you ever go and try to grab a case of Mountain Dew at the store, only to find out when you get home that you grab Diet Mountain Dew, which really sucks. It's kind of like that. The words on the bottle are tiny, so I say be careful when you're picking it out or when you're looking for it. Now, I snagged this 1 liter bottle of Woodford at the duty-free shop in Cancun at the airport a couple weeks ago. And I was surprised to find this for $45. I hadn't seen it. Actually, it was in this really cool box too, which kind of schnookered me into getting it. But when I got home, I was actually pleasantly surprised when I realized it was not the $7.50. It was the big boy. So it was kind of dumb luck, I guess. So the mash bill. It's a barely legal 51% malted barley, 47% corn, 2% rye. What do I mean by barely legal here? Well, back to my OnlyFans page. No. What I mean is barely legal malt whiskey. And that means a whiskey that contains just enough malted barley to meet the legal requirements for a malt whiskey. Now, in the United States, for a whiskey to be a malt whiskey, it's got to be made from at least 51% malted barley in its mash bill. So barely legal malt whiskey would use just that, 51% malted barley, and that's what Woodford's done here. Now, I think they've done that for a couple of reasons. I really believe the main reason they did this was because, in their minds at least, this mash bill bridges the gap between a traditional American whiskey and a Scottish single malt. Really, they're just trying to attract bourbon drinkers who may not have taken the dive into malt whiskey yet. This would be a nice way to ease into it. So they think. So the color, I say it's something like a bright gold, and honestly, it looks luscious to me. Now that's in the bottle. I haven't poured it in the glass yet. We'll get there in just a minute. And I always say this, the color is probably irrelevant, especially if you're kind of trusting me on that piece of the puzzle, but sometimes it gives you an idea of the breadth of flavors you're about to put in your mouth. Now, in my opinion, the darker the hue of the whiskey, the deeper the flavors. It's not always true, but it is sometimes, so it's worth noting, and I'm going to say it every time. Today I'm tasting with my favorite Glencairn. As you know, that's my one, the Glencairn I got from Limestone Branch Distillery. Just my favorite. So let me crack open this bottle. I've already taken the liberty of getting that out of that fancy box that came in that darn cellophane. It seems like I always fight with that cellophane and almost put my eye out with the pocket knife. Am I the only one that fights with the cellophane? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. All right, so we'll get a nice little pour here. And give me just a second here. I want to nose this bad boy just for a minute. Yeah, it looks beautiful in the Glencairn. I usually don't judge a whiskey by how it looks in the bottle, because depending on the bottle shape, style, color, that's going to impact how it looks in the bottle. So you're not really going to want to judge it that way. You're going to want to put it in your Glencairn, and that way you can really inspect it. So on the nose, I'm getting a hay, like right off the bat, or a grass, and I don't mean like green grass. Don't think you just mowed the lawn. I'm talking like a pampas grass or like a dry grass. There's lots of sweet light caramel, baking spice. Okay, when I say baking spice, it's more bready. It's like fresh baked white bread. Or okay, if you've ever been to a place called Lambert's Cafe, the place that's the home of the throwed rolls, they throw the rolls across the room at you, and the rolls are bigger than your fist. It's amazing. They've got 2 locations in Missouri, and they've got 1 in Alabama. So Google it. You're welcome. I'm also getting some light fruit notes, maybe apple, and cherries, like bright red ripe cherry. Yeah, that's really coming through on the nose. Let me take a sip. Wow, this has a lot going on. I'm getting that caramel, that fruitiness, strong cherry flavor, lots of cherry. Maybe just a smidge of mintiness as it rolls off the tongue. Let me take another sip. It's got this terrific long finish. I mean, it keeps going on forever and ever and ever. Got to get another sip. Gosh, I'm getting that warmth in the chest. And okay, that's kind of unusual. This is being a 90.4 proofer. This is drinking way above its proof point to me. This is drinking like almost 100 proofer in a good way. And it's got a finish, like I said, that goes on and on. And I'm getting just a hint of cocoa and maybe a little bit of leather, which is really nice to round this thing out. It's so nice. I need another sip, sorry. So what's the verdict? I'll have the answer right after the money spot. Are you looking to update your bar or man cave with some great photographs or wall art? Head over to Etsy at famousdocs.etsy.com and pick up some fantastic prohibition, whiskey, and gangster-related photographs and wall art. And if you purchase 4 or more items, you'll get 20% off your entire order for a limited time. That's famousdocs.etsy.com. So as you know, on the Blind Tasting Podcast, we have 3 verdict options. Are we going to keep it, collect it, or cull it? Now, to keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or bar. This stuff is good for a pour anytime, but there's really no need to stock up on it since it's always available. Collect it means to grab another bottle or maybe 2 since you find it so darn delicious, or it may just not be easy to get your hands on. Or cull it. Use it to loosen rusty bolts or sanitize a dirty toilet. In the case of Woodford Reserve straight malt whiskey, I say keep it. It's great. Like I said, I got this 1 liter for $45, but you can get a 750 for, I think, around $40, $39.99, something like that, and you should grab one. If you've never thought about trying a malt whiskey, I'd start with this one. It's got enough malted barley to wet your whistle, but it's not overpowering. So like I said, and like I think Woodford believes, it does. It bridges the gap between traditional American whiskey and that Scottish single malt. You can ease your way into those offerings over time, but this is a great place to start. I hope you also enjoyed the drink-along aspect of this podcast. The next one will be Little Book the Infinite. So if you can find it, good luck. Grab one and let's sip together on the next episode. Well, last but not least, I got to give a shout out to the farmers, the distillery production guys and gals, the warehouse workers, the bottlers, and the truck drivers. They're the ones that make it happen, so cheers to all of them. That's all I got for today, Whiskey Freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.